think about your wallet. Inside your wallet, you will have your ID, some cash, and maybe a few cards. All of that information belongs together in one place. Now, imagine trying to carry each item separately in your hands. It will be messy, right? That's what your code will look like if you don't use objects. So, meaning, as you start creating lines of code, you will just realize that you already have built thousands of lines of code without realizing, and even yourself will not be able to remember. So, in layman's term, JavaScript objects are like that wallet. To make it simple, it will help you organize related information neatly so you can access relevant information easily. In this video, I'll show you exactly how JavaScript objects work, why they're different from simple values, how to create them using object literals, and how to access information using dot and bracket notation. If you have not followed along, you can access how to set up a JavaScript development environment that you will find at the end of the screen. And if you stick with me until the end, you will have a solid foundation for working with objects in your own code. Don't forget to join as a member and liking the video before we jump in to further support video tutorials. Before we dive into objects, let's quickly compare primitive and reference types. As I paste this code example, primitive values like numbers or strings are copied directly. Changing one does. And as we move to line 9, objects, however, are reference type. Instead of copying the value itself, you're copying the address of where the object lives. So if you change one, the other changes too. So to fix the red squiggly line, just to make sure that you are not under the global scope. In layman version, primitives photocopying a recipe card where your copy is separate, while an object is writing down the address of a restaurant. If the menu changes, everyone with that address will also see the update. In real life use cases, the address of the objects on this example, like the name, can be dynamically provided real-time data. And as you grow and learn about objects, which will be the core of your skill set, it has paramount importance in your growth in learning JavaScript, since you'll be focusing more into objects as you deep dive into your JavaScript skill set. So what is an object? In real life, an object is anything you can describe. It is your blueprint, like a car, a person, or a phone. Each and every detail of a car, a person, or a phone has its own characteristics, like a brand, an age, or a color. In JavaScript, the objects are the same. They're containing different bundles of related information. And as I paste this example from line 17, you will be able to see the structure of an object. And as you learn JavaScript, you become a creator or a builder. Understanding the characteristics of the application you're building will give you the ability of what type of blueprint that you'll be creating. And on this example at line 17, you have a car object, and on that car, you will have a brand, a model, and a year. And if this can be a person object, then you will have a name or a first name, a last name, an age, and so on, depending on the type of application you're building. And it can be an enrollment form, it could be a registration or a credit card application. So in the user interface on the front end, you will see the structure of the form where all the necessary information will be fed. And as it goes from the front end, so let me write it down. So you have the form. So this form, let me just write it in F, then it will be submitted for processing. And the processing you'll need a structure. So that structure here from the form is basically your object. And structure in JavaScript is quite important because as you miss the commas and the correct dots or colons, then your code will not work. And the easiest way to create an object is with an object literal. So you will see this curly braces. As you create an object, you will provide all the characteristics inside the curly braces. So as you can see, the characteristics that you create, those one-liners inside the car object, makes it clean and ready to use. And as you print the characteristics of the car on this example on line 23, you have the object car and you map it with its characteristic. And in this example, it's brand and model. So this is one of the few examples of accessing the object. And as you get familiarized with the JavaScript terminologies, once you have created the object from line 17 to line 21, there are two ways on how you access the details. And from line 26, the dot notation is the most common and simple and readable in accessing the object. Then the bracket notation found from line 29, where it's more flexible and used when property names have spaces, special characters, or store variables. And as you create and expand your blueprint or the structure of your objects, you can also call this as an index. So you are indexing the property model, which is basically found inside the object. So depending on the complexity and the structure of the object, you will need to decide what is the best way of accessing the information you are trying to retrieve. And as I mentioned, that everything is an object, and I like for you to view the applications is an object, then it will be easier for you to digest from the beginning of your career on how the JavaScript language works. So in layman analogy, a dot notation is like opening a label, for example, car.brand, where you access the car object and print the value of the brand. And the bracket notation is like saying, go to the drawer whose label is written on this paper, and then you can use the variables. And as I give you more example on line 36, so dot notation is easier for normal cases, but bracket notation gives you a lot of flexibility. And as you come in, you get to also learn other objects created by other people. And as you learn and grow the structure of objects and how to access and print them, it will make your life easier on understanding what is the current architecture and how the application basically works. In another perspective, you will see that it's done in pairs. You have the key, you have the key on the left, and you have the value on the right. And this key value pair, you are accessing the key and you let the gs.info function to print the value of your object. And when I mentioned function, I don't want you to worry about it first, since you will learn it on the following lesson. And as I add more examples on line 42, you can also add or update details of the property or the key at any time. So interchangeably, I use property, key, and characteristics. So I don't want you to get confused, but all of them are one of the same. So objects are meant to be dynamic and adaptable. And as you grow your skill set in JavaScript objects and have more experience as we go along, the importance of objects is as far more important. So I'll give you another real life use case. And initially we have the form, and the form basically will be submitted, and we talk about a registration form, or you have an application, you could have a credit card application, and the object will basically consume the fields in the form and the form as it been processed. So you have the processing layer, and at the end you will have the database. Dynamically, the data sits in the database or DB. Then as you submit, it will be saved in a certain structure blueprint, and that will be your object. And as you retrieve back the information by the corresponding person who is probably processing your registration application, then looking at the structure of the form or your object will make sense as it's being retrieved back to the form where they will see the details of the information that you have submitted. So an object basically is just a structure and making sure about reusability of your data and making it organized. So I'll give you more examples and let me clear the board. And another capability of an object, as we scroll down on line 45, objects can also contain other objects like folders inside folders. So it is perfect for representing something with multiple layers of details. And you will see here that to get it organized, in every person, there will be details of that person and also the address. And from there, we can navigate down from the person object and drilling down to its characteristics of address and coming into a city. And basically, you will see it's how you organize things and make it being readable on the person who's receiving and consuming the information. And as you structure your object and design it properly and correctly, then it will start to make sense. And looking at this perspective, and I'm assuming that you're already a user of a computer, and this representation is always represented in a form. It could be in a web portal, a mobile, and so on. But as it goes back for processing, then it has to be structured correctly so the data will be processed in a proper way. So to make it simple, it's all about organization. And as you yourself into objects or different files of paper, then the limitation of a hard copy paper, the view is only two-dimensional. And as we put objects and JavaScript technology, then the limit goes beyond from 2D, 3D, 4D, and so on. Or probably it become the data will become like a sphere. And for simplicity, it all come back to an object. So as your data becomes complicated, so let me clear this screen. Another technique that I'd like to show you from line 58, as your data grows, you can look inside your object and imagine you have thousands of records, thousands of users, thousands of employees, or even hundreds and thousands. And with this technique, it's like you will be able to view the data inside your records. And you may only want to get people living a particular country or in a specific city. And you can basically print out by getting the car object and also drilling down to the key. This is like flipping through every page in a folder and to see what's inside your records. If this is all making sense, don't forget to subscribe and click the bell icon so you don't miss the rest of the JavaScript full course. You can also join as a member for deeper lessons, and if this video is helping you learn, a super thanks is always appreciated. And now that you've seen how to create and work with objects, let's circle back to the why they're different from primitives. Objects are reference types. They don't store value directly, but point to where the objects lives in memory. So I'll give you a further example of the usability of an object. So in your computer, So let's say this is your computer. You will have a CPU, a RAM, and a disk space as an example. So I will not go into detail like GPU and so on. So reference types like an object, it is being stored into the memory or your RAM. So it's a temporary storage. So the temporary storage, while it's being processed, and as I mentioned earlier, as you submit a form, then you have the object, then you have the processing layer. So meaning the processing, you could be like having a calculation or doing a search or any activity that needs to process your data. So your object holds your data as it's being processed, then it is temporarily saved in a certain part of the memory. And as you save it to a table or database, then it will go to your disk. Then to save up resources like your RAM in your computer, the data which is inside your object will be disposed of. So it helps you clear up the memory, and now the data will be saved in your disk. And as you build your application, looking at those scenarios in terms of performance of your resources has paramount importance to build your app. So let us clear up this drawing, and I'd like you to give you more examples of what an object is. And another simple real world scenario, an example of a support ticket. So the ticket structure or the blueprint, you will have a unique ID to ensure the uniqueness of your form and what will be the title and who will be doing the work. And this how objects represent real world data structures like tickets, users, or assets in an application, to name a few. And as we basically make my browser smaller to be able to view the run script, and as we run it, you will see the printout of our examples. As you follow along, I'd like you to thoroughly study them and get your hands dirty to ensure you get familiar of how JavaScript object works. And that's it, your beginner-friendly guide to JavaScript objects. You've learned the difference between primitives and reference types, how to create objects with object literals, how to access properties with dot and bracket notation, how to add, update, and nest objects, how to navigate or loop through inside objects. And if this video has helped you, like it so more people can discover it, subscribe, and click the bell of the rest of my JavaScript full course. Join as a member for exclusive lessons. And if you found this valuable, a super thanks is always appreciated. Don't stop here. The JavaScript full course playlist is right at the end of the screen. Click it and continue learning step by step.